the first of my thoughts about Barbie. Having seen it twice, starting to get together my thoughts and how it ties into the whole crazy game of this summer with the mass coming out or disruption of pop culture that we've been seeing with Taylor and everyone else. And also in general, like the astrology of why this is happening during a Venus retrograde and how that ties into the archetypal symbolism, all of that. So, this is my video. This is my thesis for this video. Barbie equals Inanna equals Venus retrograde. And also the heroine's journey, which some people have already mentioned. I've seen on TikTok that the heroine's journey is the archetype for Barbie, the movie. So, basically, I've mentioned some of this in my previous videos, but I don't know if people remember it or watch them or whatever. So basically, Inanna, Ishtar, this goddess, Babylonian, Sumerian goddess, all of that, has a story that really closely maps with the astrology of Venus retrograde. Now, essentially what happens with Venus retrogrades is that Venus goes from being able to be seen in the morning to the evening to retrograde, and then the morning. A retrograde equals invisibility. You can't see her at all for 40 days. And then she emerges again as the morning star in the morning. So it's seen as her dipping below the horizon as an underworld journey. And there's a lot of various versions of this Inanna myth of her underworld journey, based on the tablets we have and what's been translated, and also what's been carried down because of, there's evidence that Inanna was at a time a very powerful deity, and then she gradually gets demoted and then seen sort of a little bit ridiculed, and the attitude towards her changes as the patriarchy gets more and more in control. That's a separate topic, but there's a lot of it's tough to find the truth because there are so many versions, and maybe there isn't even one singular truth about her. But you can see how the public perception of her changes, and it's really fascinating. So anyway, there's one story. There's a couple different variations, but the one that I've heard and that we're going to go with this time is that the Venus retrograde is a way for her to integrate her shadow self, who is this sister of hers, Ereshkigal, who is in the underworld, who is like the ugly version of her. And Inanna is often described, she's kind of like the Barbie of Sumerian mythology. She's described as a super beautiful Venus, analog, and she's the queen of the sunlight and all of that. And so she has to, for whatever reason, go to the underworld. And so she goes in, and she's a little cocky, and she has to kind of go through these 7 different ways of being humbled. She's wearing all of these different garments that have associated powers with them, and different, scepters and all of that, and she has to go through 7 gates of the underworld to get to her sister who lives at the throne of the underworld. And she keeps going, and then she's judged. When she arrives at the bottom of the underworld, she is naked, and she gets judged, and she gets killed, and they have her corpse down there in the underworld, and she can't get back up. And eventually some of the other gods have to help her and trick her sister into giving her corpse back, either trick her or by showing her human kindness or divine kindness, help her kind of realize that completely killing Inanna was not maybe the most useful, the most fair thing. So they get her corpse back and they reanimate it with water, these magical drops. They sprinkle Kurjara on Inanna's corpse and take her back. But Ereshkigal says, no, you can't just take someone, you need someone to take her place. And she goes back and she finds her husband has not been mourning her properly, and so then she sends her husband into the underworld, and they kind of alternate, and that's basically the story. And people have compared this to the fact that Mars and Venus alternate retrogrades, because they never happen in the same year. They're always, they happen every 2 years, but then they're out of sync with each other. So they were comparing that to that. Very interesting. Anyways, so that's the basic thing. But for Barbie, I was reading Barbie as this analog of this. Barbie taking this archetypal journey to the underworld, where she is the perfect, hyper-feminine person on top of the world. She's called to integrate her shadow self. She has to sacrifice. I've been trying to figure out what the 7 garments were that she sacrificed, but I think I figured them out. I think the first one, oh, I should take a picture of this, but the first one is the flat feet. The second one is inescapable thoughts of death. The third one is cellulite. The fourth one is rollerblades. And then she gets, and it's not a direct analog, but she has tears when she sees the old woman, and then she gets water in the cup at Mattel. And then she gets tea from Ruth, the ghost of Ruth, to help her go back to Barbie Land. And then she takes off her shoes, hat, and jacket, and then flops on the ground. So that's my thought about maybe the 7 of those. Let's see. Click here. And, let's see. Okay. She goes to the underworld, which is the real world in this case, to see her shadow sister, the sister who's thinking about death, who's the queen of the underworld. So she sees Sasha in the cafeteria, and Barbie, and who berates her and metaphorically kills her by sending her to Mattel, where they try to put her back in the box, where she's reduced to an inanimate object. She's returned to sentience by liquid, which is the tea. She's able to suddenly drink tea, which she hadn't been able to drink before. And she realizes she needs to reintegrate her shadow self. So she takes her back to Barbie Land, and then Ken has to have his downfall because she needs to sacrifice her quote-unquote husband who has taken over and not been mourning her correctly. And before she's capable of taking Ken fully down, she also again flops on the ground, where she's having an existential crisis. And then she's helped out to reassert her power by her shadow self, Sasha and Gloria. And then Ken has his crisis, and then Barbie emerges again into the daylight. You can see where she's saying daylight at the end, daylight through dappled leaves, as a purified, and more humble, and more human and grounded woman. So that is my thought about that. And this is also came out the day of the Venus retrograde station. And so in general, Venus retrograde rethinking femininity, especially in Leo, through a movie. Leo's associated with like performing arts and fame and all of that. And rethinking, what a stable version of femininity would be, or rethinking outdated gender roles, or what it means to be a woman. That's my thought.